Hello, my friends. Happy Friday to you. My name is LaShonda Brown, and welcome to Bootstrap Biz Advice Live, where I teach service providers how to work less and live more by leveraging tech. And I am super excited for this conversation, specifically about lead generation techniques utilizing quizzes, because quizzes are making a comeback. And I really want to make sure that you all are equipped with strategies that will help you to grow your list and to grow your income. So, I brought in my friend Josh, who's the co founder of Interact, to have a very candid conversation about what is working in online quizzes. And I would encourage you to watch this live, but also watch the replay so that you can actually implement some of the strategies that we talk about in this live stream. So, if at any point while you're watching on LinkedIn or on YouTube you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up Josh to start the conversation. Hello, hello, and welcome to the stream.
And thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. I want to start with the easiest question of the day, and that is, let's tell the people who you are and what Interact is.
Yeah. So my name is Josh Haynam. I'm co-founder at Interact. Interact is a lead generation quiz software. We started the company all the way back in 2012. So kind of before a lot of online softwares even existed. So we've been doing this close to 13 years. And outside of work, I like to be outside as much as possible, not on the internet. So I think that actually helps with this particular product because quizzes are all about conversation and about connection. And so it really is about bringing the outside world into the internet world. It's not necessarily like, you're just throwing up content or landing page. You have to kind of get into the nuances of conversation. So I think it actually really helps that's kind of more my persona as a person. And that's kind of the vibe of our team as well. But that is the kind of short of who I am and what Interact is.
So I definitely have seen people implement different strategies to grow their lists over the years. I had a recent moment where I was just like, you know what? I cannot do yet another PDF as a lead magnet. I'm tired. I cannot do it. I do not want to make another one. And so I actually utilized a voice note as a lead magnet where people could opt in and I would send them the information in the form of like a 10-minute voice note. So, like a baby little podcast or just a little nugget of wisdom. And then I put the transcript on that landing page. And so, I think what I'm beginning to see is that people are wanting to create experiences and not just give information in the age of AI. And so I want to start with just the aspect of how are you seeing people utilize quizzes specifically to grow their lists in 2025?
Yeah, it's a good question because things have changed a lot. And I like that you said quizzes are having a resurgence because it really is true. There was an initial surge back in like 2017 through 2020. It was the first wave of quizzes, and those quizzes used to be kind of like versions of what you'd see in Cosmopolitan, just like for fun quizzes. And then at the end, you'd ask people if they'd like to join your email list. And it was just like a really simple, fun, playful way of growing an email list. Around 2023, 2024, a lot of those quizzes just stopped working completely. Like they were bringing in, 1,000 leads a month, and then all of a sudden it was zero. And I think consumer sentiment changed dramatically during those years. We've been through a couple of crazy years in terms of the economy and what's going on, and people feel off. Consumer sentiment is actually at the lowest since it's been recorded, starting in the 1980s. So people are not necessarily wanting to just like have some fun and then join an email list. But what's come back with quizzes is quizzes that are super, super specific and super helpful, either helping you solve a problem that you really, really want an answer to, or helping you reach a dream state or a goal state in your life that you really, really want to reach. And whether it's the problem state or the dream state, it has to be something that your audience, like, they're burning to know the answer to for themselves. And it's not just an answer that they can get by watching a quick video or going on ChatGPT or reading on the internet. It's an answer that's personal to them. It's a nuanced answer. It requires context about who they are as a person. And those are difficult problems to solve for your customers because unless you're DMing back and forth or you're going over email or you're live on a call, you don't necessarily get a chance to gather the context about who the person is who's asking this question. But with a quiz, you can automate that. You can ask them about themselves, you can understand their life situation, and then either give them that solution or give them a path to reach their dream state. And those are really the two kind of paths that are working really well for quizzes because it's so specific to helping the person who's asking the question get what they want, which is just a world away from what quizzes used to be, 7 or 8 years ago.
I completely agree with you. And I think we were talking before about how, when the pendulum swings one way, eventually it swings hard in the opposite direction. And so, you have this age of technology where so many things are so fast and so accessible. You have a question, go to ChatGPT, type it in, boom, here's your answer. But I think because you have that aspect of that's already covered, people are wanting something more bespoke, something more specific to their unique needs that they can't just get in that quick search. And so it actually reminds me of like way back when with like the Enneagram tests, like you couldn't just go and just type into ChatGPT, what is my Enneagram at the time? You had to actually take the quiz and take the assessment. And you wanted to get the assessment done because you wanted more specific answers to your unique needs and situations. And so I think if we can kind of think about how we create quizzes within that frame of mind, we can actually be a lot more effective than being more vague or more even more fun with the quizzes. I feel like they're becoming more like assessments. Are you seeing that on your side of the fence?
Yeah, I think depending on whatever word works for the creator of the quiz, the assessment, the diagnostic, whatever it may be, it's all kind of just converging to this personalized help. And that's kind of what you were saying there. And I like that where it's like, yeah, you can't just ask what's my Enneagram. You have to answer what's going on with you and who you are and what your preferences are and how you show up in the world in order to get that. And then whoever is asking those questions of you, the business owner, can help you in a more personalized way. So I think the broad category is just personalized help, personalized assistance to either solve a problem or get you to a goal. And as long as you're in that, the framing of it really depends on what your audience is going to respond to. So some audiences respond really well if you call it an assessment, others a diagnostic tool, others a matchmaker, others a quiz. It just depends on what your audience is going to respond to in terms of what resonates with them. But the goal is always to offer personalized help, and a quiz is the easiest way to do that, and certainly the most cost effective because the other options for kind of doing this stuff, if you're going to try to do machine learning or something that's on your website that tries to deduce who the customer is and then makes recommendations, those products are really expensive.
Well, I think that's a really good point too, because it's like, there's so many different tech options that are out there. I think a lot of people get subscription happy, and before they know it, like their tech stack, it's got like 50 tools in it. And so I think what's really nice about Interact is that it's a very specific tool for a very specific purpose, and it does it really well versus being, sort of okay in that area and can cover a lot of different bases. So I think there are needs to have specialized tools for specific outcomes. And so I was thinking about this too. I've seen a lot of people actually implementing quizzes on the back end of people opting in to their email list. So saying, they opt in maybe just to sign up for a newsletter. And so they're using that quiz to actually learn more about their audience. So have you been seeing instances of people using it after people opt in for a list?
Absolutely, yeah. Like either to learn more about that customer or help them find the right pathway for them or find the right product, whatever it may be, it can help automate that experience because, again, it's an example of like a personalized help situation where otherwise you would have to wait for that customer or that, course purchaser to write in and ask you hey, what's the best path? How should I proceed? But if you can turn that into a quiz, then it helps to automate the experience. And the way we like to think about this is if you can offer the same level of experience that you would if it was going to be you DMing or you talking to somebody, then that's the perfect space for a quiz. There's other spaces where it's not going to match up, and in those cases you need to just actually talk to people and help them in that way. So you kind of got to decide whether this is something that's a right fit for a quiz or not. But in a lot of cases, yeah, you can provide the same level of experience that you would if you were going to DM, but it's actually better because it's in real time and the person doesn't have to wait for you to get back to them.
No, that's a really good perspective to have because I think sometimes people get really pigeonholed in how they're supposed to utilize a tech tool and they don't think about other use cases that can just make their lives easier in other areas. And so that's one of the things that I do try to talk to my community about is to say, hey, here is a tool that does a specific thing, but there are multiple applications where this tool can make your life easier. So I have seen people utilize it after people opt in as a way just to kind of pair them with what are the best next steps. Like, hey, you join my newsletter, but did you know I have this community? Did you know I had this course? Did you know I have this consulting package? And so that really does help people to kind of navigate through your offer suite in a way that's really going to pair them up with effective strategies to grow their businesses. So I think the next question I want to ask you is just simply about making data driven decisions, because I think there was a time where you could just look at social media metrics and kind of decide like what's working, what's not, what do people want to create. But I think now we really need to start looking at the back end of, say, for instance, our quizzes to kind of make some business decisions. And so have you seen people using that as a way to do any type of product research in their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite story here is from Stephanie Lantry. She's a co-owner of White Eagle Resort. It's up I don't remember where it is. It's in Minnesota somewhere. It's a very cool resort, but this is like the most cool example of this because it's a resort, and in order to expand their resort, they have to build physical buildings. And their quiz has a question on it that asks people, "How big is your group?" i.e., how many bedrooms do you need in your specific, cabin? Because it's just individual cabins that they offer. It's not like one hotel, and they've actually used the quiz to decide what size of cabins to build, which is like the ultimate example of product because like that's a huge risk if you get it wrong and you build two-bedroom cabins, but actually you want five-bedroom cabins. So they're actually able to look at the data and see how many people are requesting two-bedroom cabins versus five or even more. And it turns out that a lot of people want the two-bedroom cabins, so they're actually going to build more for next season.
Okay, that's definitely an application of it that I would have never thought of, but it's actually brilliant. And I think that's a really smart way of making sure that you use quizzes to like reduce waste, right? Like creating specifically what people are asking for versus creating it and hoping that they come. So, do you have any other success stories that would really encourage people on how to utilize quizzes differently in their business?
Yeah, the story that's really developed over the last year, and she launched her quiz right around this time last year, around November, comes from creator. Her name is Erin, and the brand is called Advice with Erin. I had her on the podcast for Interact earlier this year. She created this quiz that's a career archetype quiz because she kept getting a ton of DMs from people asking, hey, I feel like I'm not really in the right career. Something feels off. I don't feel like I'm doing the right thing with my life. And so she would have these DM conversations over and over and over again. And that's a perfect example of a context specific question because somebody writes in and says, hey, what's the right career for me? You can't just say, oh, go be a lawyer. Like you have no context. You need to know, who are you? What are your interests? What do you like? How important is money to you? Like, do you need to have a job that pays a ton, or are you okay if you have a job that pays less but you really enjoy it? And so she created this career archetype quiz. It's really more of like an assessment, an aptitude quiz. It's very in depth, has 32 questions, and over the last year, it's generated 140,000 leads. So 140,000 have taken taken the quiz and joined her email list. More than that have taken it, but 140,000 have joined her email list from that quiz. And it's a perfect example of this new way of doing quizzes where it's based on years of people writing into her, asking the same question over and over again. And then her realizing, in order to answer that question, I have to ask questions first. I have to understand who is asking me this and why are they asking me this and what are their preferences, what are their priorities, and then baking all of that into a quiz that leads to one of 6 different career archetypes at the end. So it's not specifically saying, oh, do this job or that job, but it's saying, do this general type of job. And then it links over to different recommendations for specific jobs that you can do based on your type. So that is a perfect example of this new type of quiz that is completely based on what does your audience desperately want to know an answer to? What are they clamoring to know? What are they asking you about? Usually through DMs, because these are the types of questions that are so important to people that they ask you in person or directly. They're not necessarily commenting on a post asking. It's the type of thing that matters to them so much that they need to know the answer. And so that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about with this new age of quizzes.
So you brought up a really cool point, and I'm seeing this a lot in the licensed professional counselor community where you utilize quizzes to create a resource where it's so valuable that other people actually essentially share your lead magnet because they see the value in it. You've put in so much time and effort in cultivating this really expansive quiz, and so instead of someone else creating the exact same resource, oftentimes they will literally just share the link to your quiz. And I saw a situation like that with Dr. Dalton, Sandra Dalton Smith, where she talked about the different types of rests. And so you could take the quiz, and once you take the quiz, you can figure out, where are you deficient and where should you be focusing on in terms of getting more rest in your life. And so it's been taken by tons of people, and a lot of people refer traffic to her simply because it's a very valuable resource in and of itself. So I think that's a great application where you take a lot of your knowledge and you dump it into this resource one time, and then it continues to be useful to people who may connect with you further or simply just want that information in the moment. So I think that's super good. I will say I'm always curious about how people are utilizing technology incorrectly or just not having success. And so, what are some of the common mistakes that you see people making as they try to implement quizzes in their business?
The biggest one, and this honestly envelops pretty much all the mistakes that people make with quizzes, is they don't know what their audience wants to know an answer to prior to coming to us. So they come to us and then ask us, hey, what's the best practice in my industry? And there really is not one. The best practice is to know what questions your audience is asking you, what they really want to know the answer to, that you're not able to effectively answer using other forms of content like short videos or YouTube or blogs or a podcast. There just isn't an answer unless you know more about who's asking. And you have to know what question in particular is not only the most asked, but also the most pressing for your audience. If you know that ahead of time, then turn it into a quiz, it never fails because all you have to do is iterate the messaging until it resonates with the audience. The mistake that people make is they come to us, they hear, oh, quizzes are good for lead generation, quizzes are good for traffic, whatever it may be, but they don't know what their audience actually wants from them. And so I advise people honestly until you do know what your audience wants from you, don't invest in something like a quiz because you're going to be paying for something that's not actually delivering results. And knowing what your audience wants from you helps in so many other areas of your business in terms of your content strategy and what you're talking about and how you show up online, that it's going to pay huge dividends elsewhere. So it's really that one thing, and that's always the core of the issue when somebody's not having success with quizzes.
So I know you guys have really started to lean into AI when it comes to how Interact practically works. And so I would love to know, in the age of AI, how has integrating AI into Interact taking it to the next level?
It gets a lot of people past like the initial stages of writing the content of the quiz. So once you know what that problem is that your customers are facing, that they're coming to you over and over again for, it can be tricky to think about, okay, so how do I then group the answers into the different results of the quiz? How do I then turn those results into questions that I can ask people to figure out which result is going to be helpful to them? And that's where our AI comes in. If you tell it a very detailed explanation of what problem your audience is facing that they're coming to you for, that would be a good fit for a quiz, you tell our AI a very detailed description of who your audience is and what they want from you and what you need to be asking them about, then it's going to spit out a really great initial version of a quiz that's going to get you past the initial kind of like, how does this work? How do I write these questions? How do I write these results? Then you go back through and change it to be more in your brand voice, more in your style. But it's getting people past that initial hurdle of like, I have this great question that I want to answer with a quiz. How does that even work? And that's where it's been super helpful.
So I definitely want to make sure that before we keep going with more information about quizzes, that we let people know that I do have a way to make Interact a little bit more accessible and cost effective for them. So I will go ahead and pop that up on the screen real quick for those of you who are watching live on LinkedIn or live on YouTube. You can go to lashondabrown.com/interact and use the code Bootstrap for 50% off your first 3 months. There also is a short free trial at the beginning when you create your account. So definitely make sure that you check that out. It's also linked in the description of the video and in the caption of the LinkedIn event. So as you are listening to us talk about quizzes and talk about how you can use the AI tool to be able to get started from scratch without having to start with a blank quiz, I would encourage you to also utilize that code if you would like to make it cheaper for you to get started. So definitely check that out. Now, I do want to pick your brain because I have seen many an Interact quiz, and I have seen a lot of people have different, I'll say, offers after the quiz is done, right? So you walk through, you have a certain amount of quiz questions, and you get to the end. Some people just add you to their email list, but some people go all out. I've seen almost like ebooks delivered after you've completed the quiz. And so I would say my biggest question for you is, as we're designing the quiz, trying to make something effective, what are some beneficial things that people can offer after the quiz is done to put more qualified leads into their funnels?
Yeah, it depends on how your funnels typically work. So for some folks, their funnels contain a lot of information and their audience wants to learn a lot before investing in a product or a service or a book or whatever it may be. And so in those cases, your quiz results are going to be long. You can use the result redirect function within Interact, which means you redirect your quiz results to your own landing pages. So you can have lots of deep content there, lots of rich text, lots of interactivity on those pages themselves. And in those cases, it's going to be several panels of content and context about each result, and then link out to resources, which can be a mix of free and paid. So maybe you have a podcast that's free and you have a course that's paid, and those kind of go at the bottom of those results pages. In other cases, like if you're in e-commerce, oftentimes people are just wanting to look for a product recommendation and they want a little bit of context about why it's the right product for them, but really they just want to see a list of products. And the value there is that you're listing 3 or 4 products instead of like 50 if you have 50 in your product catalog. So still valuable in that sense. So it really depends on what your audience responds well to in terms of how much information, how much they want to get straight to a product recommendation, what's the most valuable thing to them. And if you can think about it through that context, then it really helps in putting those result pages together to be effective, because we've seen everything from 2 sentences and then a product recommendation all the way up to 1,500 words of really detailed context about who you are based on your quiz result.
So that's really good because I think it will help people just to get their minds going to say like, okay, even if you have just a very short snippet of information, if it's effective to the person taking the quiz and it's valuable to them, then you don't have to do an extravagant results page. But you also can go all out if it makes sense for your business. So I see that Alan is hopping on and he said he's so excited that he caught this, excited to improve his quiz and marketing it better. So I think marketing the quiz is something that a lot of people struggle with. I think in the early days, just saying you had a quiz was different enough to get people to kind of like click over and say like, oh, what's that? Let me go experience it. But I think now it is becoming more of a common way to grow your list. And so if someone is trying to boost the marketing of their quiz, what are some effective strategies that you've seen people implement?
Yeah, there's two that have been working really well in 2025. And like I said, since everything took a hard pivot in 2023, 2024, I've been doing an enormous amount of research with the top quiz creators to see what are they doing that's actually working. So here's the two things that have come out after that. Number one is using social media. So posting reels or carousels, those are the two content types that are performing the best right now on either Instagram or TikTok or on LinkedIn. And what you're going to do with those is different, completely different than it used to be. What you're going to do, if you're talking about, let's say, an assessment style quiz, and it's, what are the different stress types and what's your stress type? You're not going to say, go take my stress type quiz. You're going to say, here's the 5 types of stress that are debilitating people who are X type of people. And you're going to name your audience. They're going to go through those 5 types. You're going to talk about it on camera, or you'll have a really nicely laid out carousel. And then what you're going to do in the comments is say, comment quiz, and use a ManyChat automation to send people to your quiz page. That is the new way to promote quizzes that's working really well organically as far as promoting it actively to a new audience. And then if you're doing like a personality type quiz, you might be like, here's the 5 types of careers that make people feel fulfilled, and you'll name them, you'll talk them through. You, whatever content style works with your audience. It could be a skit, it could be, you talking to camera, it could be you doing real life, whatever it is that's resonating with your audience as both engaging and entertaining content. That's what you got to do, and then use the ManyChat automation to send the link. That's the new thing. That's the primary way to get it in front of net new people. And then the second way to promote is the old way, which still works, which is have the quiz prominently on your website as an item in the header or a header bar or a pop-up that shows up after a certain amount of time for traffic that's coming to your website that's more interested, more warm. It's a way of converting that traffic. That's the kind of steady state one. The social media one, as we all know, some of those reels that you post will hit really big and get you a ton of leads. Others will get nothing. And that's just the social media algorithm. And you have to try multiple times. The creators who are successful with that usually have somewhere between 10 and 50 different reels promoting their quizzes. And 2 or 3 of them will really pop off and get a bunch of leads. The rest will not be bad content, but won't bring in anything. So that's just kind of the social media game these days. And then on the website, that's the consistent traffic converting into leads.
I'm really glad that you brought that up in terms of integrating ManyChat into Instagram because I have been finding, and it's very funny. I'm curious to see how long it's going to take Instagram to have their own version of it at some point, but it really has given Instagram new life because it has created more comments on the posts, more engagement, and it's really helping people to drive traffic to the DMs where the money is actually being made. I am seeing a content shift as well, primarily on Instagram, but I think it's kind of making its way to platforms like LinkedIn and a little on YouTube. Is this idea of like a content series or a signature series? And so I would encourage you guys as you think about, creating content based on essentially the archetypes in your quiz, think of that as a series. So just like Josh was saying, here are the 5 professions that will make a Enneagram 2 feel fulfilled, right? That could be one specific video. But then you can follow that up with 8 eight professions for Enneagram 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so as you create more and more content, it does create an environment where people go back and they watch previous content, or it's easier to share because people know like this is what people will actually benefit from by being a part of that series. So I'm just seeing a huge shift in people not thinking about their content as just like one specific thing, but thinking about it as a whole experience. So you were talking about how you can market your quiz on Instagram. Are you seeing people market their quizzes on platforms like LinkedIn or even using video content on TikTok or YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So on LinkedIn, generally, it's kind of the same approach where you're talking about the different types, or you're talking about a customer story. There's a great example where it's a personal stylist, and she'll talk about customer stories and then say, hey, go take my quiz to find your personal style, because that's her quiz. That's a great example on LinkedIn. And then on YouTube, what people will do, like we have a great car reviewer. The Car Mom is the brand name, and she'll put the quiz in the comments. And her quiz is, what's the right family car for you? And so she's reviewing a Toyota Highlander, and in the comments it'll say, take the quiz to find the right family SUV for your family. And it's just a great call to action because it's a natural follow on. It's not too heavy. It's useful to the person watching. If they're watching a Toyota Highlander video and they're trying to figure out which SUV they should buy, it's a natural tie-in. So it's really a natural way of getting people to the next step versus just sending straight to a website or having to try to like create a new PDF every time you create a piece of content, because that could be overwhelming. You can have a quiz that applies to a lot of different content on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and then use it as like a persistent call to action.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think you get a lot more leverage out of your quiz if you do think of it more as like, how can the same audience member get benefit from taking this quiz? So you can make multiple pieces of content to drive to that one product. Do you find that people who utilize Interact have more than one quiz in the platform, or are they driving traffic to a specific like signature quiz?
Yeah, so if we think about the whole marketing funnel, right, we have like awareness, conversion, activation, and then retention slash referral. Those are kind of like the four big buckets that we see with our audience. At the awareness level, these days people will have 5 to 50 quizzes. And those quizzes can be used as a connection to a specific reel that you're doing. There's a great quiz tie-in, and you're using a specific quiz for that. Or they can be used to drive traffic from Google or from AI chatbots, where you have a whole portfolio of quizzes on your website and you're driving traffic through SEO. So at the awareness level, you can have a lot of quizzes. At the conversion level, typically there's 1, 2, 3 signature quizzes. Those are the ones that are going to be on your website. You might swap them out over time. Jenna Kutcher is a great example of that. She's had, I believe, 3 signature quizzes over the last, oh gosh, it's been almost 10 years now that Jenna's been using Interact quizzes. And each time she has like kind of a new version of her business or a new book launches, she'll make a new signature quiz that lives on the website. It lives in the link in bio. It's a persistent thing that can live for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's on the conversion level. On the activation level, like we were talking about, you might have a quiz that helps people get started once they've already purchased from you. Those quizzes also can change out when you change your signature offers, but that's not going to be super often. So you might only change those out every 2, 3 years, or maybe you'll make an update every 6 months or so. And then on the referral level, you can even use it there. Like I just interviewed Velocity, who's the content marketing manager at Energy Group, Direct Energy up in Canada, publicly traded energy company, and they have a referral personality quiz that helps people to know that they do have a referral program, and then also makes their referral program a little bit more fun for that referral level of the conversion funnel. So at every level of the funnel, there's different numbers of quizzes. At the very top, it's kind of a lot these days. Some people will have 10, 15 quizzes at the awareness level because they can be used to reach new audiences. At the conversion level, you usually have one that you're using, and it might swap out over time. Same with the activation level, and then same with the referral level. So at the top, you might have a lot, and then at the other levels, you usually have one that you're using that might change as your business changes.
I did not expect that answer. And that is a very interesting perspective because I think a lot of the people that I know, when they hop in to interact, they create a quiz. And this is the one. This is the one I'm using. And I think that there is definitely value in having a signature quiz later down in your funnel, but to really look at it as a simple way to have multiple ways to engage with your audience is a different perspective on the tool. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Now, out of sheer curiosity, what is coming up for Interact in Q4? What are you guys cooking up behind the scenes that you can share with the community?
Yeah, yeah. So I won't give away too much because Evan, who's leading some of our platform stuff these days, is gonna do some good content around our product roadmap. But high level, what's coming is design customizations to the quizzes, so you can make them look more and feel more like your specific brand. So changing the way it shows up in terms of the visuals of the quiz, as well as continuing to work on the AI assistant so that it's easier to create more quizzes. Like I said, that shift to creating 10, 15 quizzes, that's a lot of work, especially if you're doing them yourselves as a small business owner. So we want to make that easier for people. So those are the two categories that we're leaning into, in addition to continuing to make the platform easier and easier to use, because what's happening these days is that quizzes are just slotting in as a content type. You got YouTube, you got podcasts, you got blog, now you got quizzes. And so we want to make our platform really easy to use so that whenever you log in to create a new quiz asset, just like you'd log into Canva to make a new visual asset, it's just easy and simple for you.
So I'm glad you brought up Canva because you guys have also, I've seen over time, you have expanded the different tools that you integrate with. And so I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that because the fewer zaps it takes to connect to interact, the easier it is to utilize that to grow. So at this point, do you see any more integrations coming or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we always continue to integrate with especially email marketing platforms because that's the next step right after us. We live just above email in terms of the conversion funnel typically. And so we always want to be integrating with any new email platforms that are coming up or email platforms that are opening up their integrations. A couple years ago, we integrated directly with Flowdesk, and that was a huge thing because now when you want to collect leads and add them to Flowdesk, you don't have to go through Zapier, which you used to have to, and that was pretty painful for a lot of folks. And so every time there's a new email platform, we always want to make sure we are directly jumping into that and making that super easy. That's really the main category for us because if you are using quizzes for lead gen, which most people are, you don't want to have to go through Zapier because oftentimes, and this is really shocking to me because I was looking at some of the other options for making quizzes that are even free. But once you connect Zapier and you start paying for Zapier, it ends up costing more than your Interact subscription. And with Interact, we have the direct integration. So it's easier and it ends up being cheaper, even if you think you're signing up for something that's free, which kind of blew my mind.
I definitely am glad that you brought that up because that is a huge benefit when it comes to being a part of tech companies that really want to simplify things in your business. Sometimes the tool itself has become simplified, and sometimes it's just connecting them to other like minded tools. It's making your life simpler and saving you money along the way. So it's not always about the price. When you initially log into a tool, you have to think about how am I going to scale this? The more leads that come in, how is that going to affect my bottom line? And so I'm really, really glad that the Flowdesk integration came out. You guys know I'm a Flowdesk partner. And so definitely check out your dashboard to see the different integrations that have come out with Flowdesk because they are really going after making sure that the tools that you're actively using in your business really had direct connection to Flowdesk to save you money on those third-party integrations. So again, this is the code I would love for you to use if after this conversation about quizzes, you feel empowered to go out and create. Make sure you go to lashandrabrown.com/interact. Use code Bootstrap for 50% off your first 3 months. So Josh, before I let you go, do you have any other parting words before I land the plane?
The best advice that I get back from our customers is two things. One, don't overthink things and be iterative. And then two, talk to your ideal customers as much as you possibly can, especially in a time like this where things are shifting and sentiments changing a lot. One of the best ways to stay focused in your business and continue growing is to talk to the customers that you serve who are really happy with what you have to offer. That's like really great advice that I got from Hannah Williams, who's the founder of Salary Transparent Street. And I think about that all the time, especially in these changing times. So if you're out there thinking about quizzes or whatever, focus on always talking to your ideal customers at least once a day. It makes business a lot better.
That is perfect advice to end on. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to share what's actually working so that people can be successful with implementing this strategy. Guys, I would encourage you, if you popped on about halfway through this, that you go back and you listen to the replay. Feel free to share with your community as well. To those watching on LinkedIn, so glad to see you. I hope to see you on YouTube as well. And as we like to say on the channel, until next time, ta-ta for now.